Hi, welcome back from spring break. I came up with a really cool design problem for you guys to use from some of your recycled materials. You need one box. I'm going to use a Cheerios box, okay? One empty box. So if you didn't gather a lot of supplies over break, you can definitely get one box in the next day or so, even if you have to take something out of it and leave it in the packaging. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is you are going to empty out the box, find the seam that makes the box kind of go together and peel that apart. So what we're going to get from that is we're just going to get an open piece of cardboard that can get folded back together to create that same form. Lay your box flat on the floor or on a table, opened up, so that the outside of the box is facing up. Any scraps you can pull off. So here comes your design problem. You are going to draw lines on this box from different directions, and then we're going to try and fold that back into a more interesting form when we're finished. Draw at least 6 lines coming from any direction from the top, 2 at least coming from the sides, each side, and at least 2 on each side of the box coming from the bottom. I'm going to do an extra here, extra couple to change it up. I did all straight lines. You can do curves. You can do it however you want. I may do a second one that has a different approach to it. This box, I'm going to do a series of curves to start. So that's going to come here, this one. Try not to let any of them go more than halfway, and that they don't cross, because we want them to still connect, because somehow this has to stay together. There's a curve. I'm also going to add some straight lines into this one. All right, so remember, you've got a series of lines coming down from the top, at least 6, at least 4 coming from the bottom, and at least 2 from your sides. They can be any direction and any straight or curve, whatever you want. Try not to, again, try not to have them cross, and try not to have them go more than halfway across. If you want some to be longer than others, you can absolutely do that. I'm going to make a skinny one here, and I'm going to add another curve that's going to intersect into the spine of the box. Okay, now I'm going to take a scissor and I'm going to cut along the lines that I created here into the box. Again, try not to have them intersect one another, because that will cause a piece to come out. Unless, of course, you decide later that you want them to come out. Right now, we're just going to kind of focus on folding this back into a form that can kind of enclose itself. So you can see how I'm starting to cut all of these sections out. You're going to do that to all the lines on the box so that they're all opened up. All right, now I have all of the cuts made in the box. Here's the one that I did with the straight lines. And here's the one that has the curves as well. Now what you're going to do is you're going to lay it flat so that you no longer see the side with all the printing from the box. You want the inside of the box laying face up. And you're going to start to bend the box. Try to see what kind of shapes that you've created by making these cuts. Bend parts. Think about how you can create an interesting form by bending them and putting this back together. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take one section of where I originally opened up that first seam, and I'm going to tape that together. I have some tape here. I'm going to do it from the inside so that my tape is on the printed side of the box, because we don't want to see that. So I'm going to put it there, and I'm just going to make it so that that holds that together for me while I'm putting this other parts together. You can use glue. I'm not sure that a glue stick is going to really hold this, so you might need tape first. You can also, if a little flap comes up, you can do a little roll of tape. I'm using like a packing tape just because that's what I had available. So it's a little stronger than Scotch tape, but you can see how that'll hold. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and I'm going to create some kind of an interesting form from it, you know, by bending and connecting these parts to see what I'm going to get. So the best way to do that, you know, you're experimenting. So, you know, what is it going to look like if I bend this down and create a really kind of an interesting curve across the top? Think of this as a piece of sculpture. You're not trying to make this look like a cardboard box that it started with. You're thinking more about form, you're thinking about design, you know, what is going to work to make this piece interesting looking, and it has to stand on its own. So I like how that form, that piece just kind of folded down. So I'm going to put that in place. And that created like a really cool curve on the top. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of think about this as I'm going. You know, if I decide I need to make another cut in it, I'm going to do that. If I like the way it's working, then I'm going to leave it the way it is. But feel free to cut it. Feel free to bend it in different ways to figure out how you're going to do this, and have a little fun with it. Okay, working hands-on doesn't necessarily mean you have to use any specific materials. Okay, so right now we're using what we have instead of clay. So I'll be back in a minute with mine kind of put together. Okay, so I decided I needed to figure out how to make this stand. So I folded a few under, two pieces, taped them together. So that's standing on the floor. I kind of like how these things are coming out. You can leave that, but I think I need some space in there because it's becoming a very solid kind of form, and I think I want some more space. So I've decided that I'm going to cut one of these out and take that piece completely out of there so that it creates almost like a leg form. It also kind of creates like some kind of space that goes through. And I'm going to do similar to the other side. I want to take this one out. And I think I want to take a section out of here. So this is where your design sense comes in. You know, what looks good to your eye. You're thinking about shape. You're thinking about form. You're thinking about three-dimensionally so that this does have to stand. You know, if you want to use these parts you cut away, you can always add them on in a section to create something else. Okay, I'm going to keep working and be back in a second. Okay, it's coming together kind of interesting. I have a little too much closed space over here, so I think I'm going to take a piece out of there. This is the one that was only the angles that I cut, so I'm trying to just do that when I take sections out. Just keep it as angles because the design of the whole piece was based off of that in the start. So I'm really not cutting any curves on this one. After I'm done with this, I'll put together the other one and give you an idea about how that one's going to work. Because they're going to come out completely different, and so are yours. It's really just, how it falls into place while you're building, which is kind of a fun way to work because, you can't really have a plan too much for this. You can have guidelines, but, there's not specifics that we have to have anytime. I'm going to cut a section out of here to make this a little bit more airy on this side, maybe two. And I want you guys to have fun with this, So I opened this up, and now I think maybe I'll attach those together there. I kind of like how they're attaching, so I'm going to continue to do that. You don't have to do it any way that I'm doing it. There's no specifics, but this is just how I'm seeing it come together while I'm building. And that's what's going to happen when you do something like this. You're going to just kind of see it, and that's how things work. Like, this is a really interesting kind of like space in there. So I'm going to try and emphasize that a little bit and push it in so that I get that kind of a curve thing to happen there more. Let's see, I think I need to take something out of this. That's like a corner, so I'm just going to cut from the corner. I don't want to make, anytime you cut anything out of this, you got to make sure that you're not making it so that it's not going to stand anymore, because that's really what you have to think about. And the whole thing is that this is a piece of sculpture. It has to stand on its own. So no matter what you're building out of, you really need to think about that. And that's one of the things that we always think about when we're working with clay. And think about your craftsmanship when you're doing this as well. Even though it's cardboard, you can still make it look good. You don't see any of the tape that I'm using to hold this together. I'm kind of trying to hide that as I'm doing it. And I'm kind of creating something that has a really interesting kind of use of space where I can kind of see sections through it. And it has some really interesting shapes that are going on. I like these like curves. I think next what I'm going to do is I'm going to add on some of these parts that I cut away. And I think I'm going to reshape them so that they're a little bit smaller. I think working like this with these little rolls of tape on the inside is really kind of interesting. So I'm going to put that on there, and I'm going to bring it so that it curves out and it creates a little bit more of an interesting shape on the outside. It doesn't have to look like anything either, right? If it comes out that you end up making it look like something, that's fine. That's one way to work. Mine really, unless you see something in it, doesn't necessarily look like something specific. So we're just working with shape. I'm going to put this one kind of doing the same thing, maybe over here, because I kind of need something sticking out of this side. It's kind of a little bit bland, so I'm going to add this piece on there and then bend it around so that it kind of starts to have a little bit of something. And maybe I need something, I don't know, I'm not in love with this side. Maybe I'll build that out with this other section. Try different things, experiment, think about, what's going to be a cool design, what's not necessarily. See, that fell off. So, actually, maybe I'll just connect that. I think that's what I needed there. Look, you see that? And I'll kind of spiral that underneath. I like that. That's exactly what it needed. Something to show a little bit more space on that side So I just took those two components that I cut off, and now I'm kind of reaching out into the space. So I need to do something like that on the other side. When you're doing stuff like this, you've got to think of all your design elements, right? You've got line, this is creating shape, form. You know, you really don't have a texture on this at this point, but you're also thinking about your principles of design, right? Focal point, balance. You know, what I do to one area or one section, I have to think about balancing that. That looks kind of funny if it's just sticking out on the one side. So I'm going to do something like that on the other side. So I cut myself a little piece off because I need something to work with. And I'm going to use one of these cutoffs and tape them together. And then I'm going to use that as some kind of a connection over here that allows me to have that similar kind of piece that sticks out. I'm going to just tape it right to the inside. Like that. And like that. So now I've got kind of a similar thing going on the two sides. It's a little big. Let's make that a little smaller. And I kind of like how this is coming together. You guys can give me your thoughts on it if you feel like it. And I just have this one like little straggler, so I think I'm going to bring that down. And then I'm going to put this aside, and I'm going to go put the other one together, and then I'll come back to you when that one is together. So, all right, so here's what I've got so far. It's kind of interesting. It stands on its own. It shows space. It shows shape. It has balance. It has interesting points from all around. And I think it's a good idea for you guys to continually like kind of look at your sculpture from different sides. Like, what does it need? What do you need to change? All right, I'm going to go work on the other one. This, remember, is the angular one. So I'm going to put this aside, and then I'll be back with the other. Okay, I'm back, and I finished my second sculpture. This one was the one that had the curves cut into it. I did a lot more bending, and I made these little kind of things like kind of pull up. I cut into that. So this is a totally different approach to the same idea. Has a lot of openings for space. It has a lot of different shapes that are created. So I'm dealing with the same principles, except we have two completely different ideas that came out of the same concept. All right, you don't have to do two, you just have to do the one, but I'm giving you two different, two different ideas as to how to start to think about it. Okay, this one I had a few issues with making it stand. So I added some of my scrap parts to the bottom there and kind of like built it up a little bit so that it would stand better. The other thing that I figured out with this is that with these little tiny ends here, it was difficult for me to tape that on. So I brought in the trusty stapler and started stapling that together. It worked great. Okay, so whatever you need to make this work, try it out. Okay, there's no right or wrong. You are experimenting, and this is all the materials that you're going to need. Okay, so I can't wait to see what you come up with your process. So good luck, have fun, and make something great.